Daniel had never planned to stay in the city for long. He arrived there with one suitcase, a phone that barely worked, and the address of a small rented room written on a folded piece of paper. The city was loud, crowded, and indifferent, but it offered something his hometown never did: anonymity. Every morning, Daniel woke up before sunrise. The room was narrow, with a small window facing another building so sunlight rarely entered. He washed his face in cold water, dressed quickly, and left without breakfast most days. Downstairs, the street was already awake, buses honking, people rushing, vendors shouting prices he no longer noticed. He worked at a printing shop near the old railway station. The job was simple but exhausting. He carried boxes of paper, cleaned machines, and sometimes helped customers choose designs they barely understood themselves. His boss was not cruel but not kind either. He paid on time and expected silence in return. During lunch breaks, Daniel sat alone on a broken plastic chair behind the shop. He watched trains arrive and leave, imagining where each one was going. Sometimes he thought about leaving the city the same way he arrived, quietly, without explanation. But something always stopped him. At night, the city changed. The streets became calmer, but the loneliness grew heavier. Daniel walked back to his room, passing the same cafe where people laughed loudly, pretending not to notice him. He often ate bread and cheese while scrolling through old messages on his phone, conversations that had ended long ago. One evening, the electricity went out in the building. The hallway was dark, and the stairs felt endless. As Daniel reached his floor, he heard someone struggling with a door. It was an elderly man who lived 2 rooms away. Without speaking much, Daniel helped him inside. That small moment changed their routine. They began greeting each other every evening. Sometimes they shared tea in silence. The old man talked about the city as it used to be, about streets that no longer existed and people who had disappeared. Daniel listened more than he spoke. Months passed without dramatic change. Daniel was still poor, still tired, still unnoticed by most people, but he felt less invisible. He learned the city's rhythm, its quiet corners, its unspoken rules. He realized that survival was not always about ambition or dreams. It was sometimes just about continuing. One morning, as he watched another train leave the station, Daniel did not imagine himself on it. For the first time, he stayed where he was, holding a cup of cheap coffee, breathing slowly. The city had not become kinder, but he had learned how to exist within it. And for now, that was enough.
Abraham Lincoln was born in a poor family in Kentucky. He grew up working on his family's farm and learning by reading books on his own. From a young age, he was interested in justice, fairness, and the idea that all people should be treated equally. Lincoln became involved in politics and eventually was elected as the 16th President of the United States. At that time, the country was divided between the northern states, which opposed slavery, and the southern states, which wanted to keep it. This division led to tension, and eventually the Civil War began. Lincoln believed that slavery was morally wrong. He saw it as a great injustice that harmed millions of people and divided the nation. He wanted to end slavery, but also needed to keep the country united. Balancing these goals was very difficult, especially during the Civil War, when the nation was fighting for its survival. In 1862, Lincoln decided to take a bold step. He wrote the Emancipation Proclamation, which declared that all enslaved people in the Confederate States would be free. This historic announcement changed the purpose of the war. It was no longer only about preserving the Union, but also about ending slavery. The proclamation encouraged enslaved people to escape and join the Union forces, and it inspired abolitionists around the world. Lincoln faced strong opposition. Many people in both the North and South disagreed with him, and he received threats to his life. Despite these dangers, he continued to fight for freedom. He believed that ending slavery was essential for the nation to live up to its founding ideals of liberty and equality. After years of struggle, the 13th Amendment to the Constitution was passed in 1865. This amendment officially abolished slavery throughout the United States. Lincoln worked tirelessly to ensure that it would be approved by Congress. Sadly, he did not live long to see the full impact of his work. He was assassinated shortly after the Civil War ended. Abraham Lincoln's actions changed the history of the United States. He ended the legal institution of slavery, gave millions of people their freedom, and set an example of moral courage and leadership. Today, he is remembered as a symbol of justice, equality, and the fight for human rights.